Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 2, Episode 2, Chapter 24. In this chapter, Jane is in a war with her neighbors, some punk rock bitches who call her a breeder. Don't love it. Meanwhile, we've got a whole bachelorette thing going on, and I really, really hated the scare with her Abuela's citizenship. I hated it so much. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Claire for commissioning this episode. What's up if you're out there listening? Claire, how are you? I'm so excited, guys. It's been such a minute. I'm going to see if I can look at the schedule and be reminded when the last time was that I got to record on this. August 29th. Damn, it's been 2 months and change. Next episode on the 16th, then we got the 21st and the 30th. Oh, good. We've got a lot of real steady bookings up until December 19th is the last one that I've got on the schedule. So we've got a good bit that's booked already. So that's great. I'm very, very excited because this show is so delightful. What a goofy mixture we have happening here. So last episode, premiere of the new season, is when Jane's baby is returned to her, and we see a temporary cessation of fire between Michael and Raphael. It's pretty much over by the middle of this episode, and they have returned to seeing one another as threats and being very adversarial, and we end up finding out that Jane feels she is in love with both of them and isn't ready to make a choice. But before we get to the choice, we have Bachelorette Jane, who is showing up and sort of playing on the tropes of that reality show with the questions that she's asking and the scenarios that she's trying to put herself in. And I have to straight up confess, I have never seen an episode of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. I know that the trope is there's one bachelor or one bachelorette, and then there's a bunch of people competing for their affections. I do not know, is the ultimate goal that they get married, happens on the other reality show that I've never seen, not Married at First Sight, although I guess that is one, but there's also Love is Blind, where you can choose to marry somebody. I think that Married at First Sight is the goal is that they are getting married and then we see what happens. Whereas Love is Blind is maybe you wind up married or you can choose not to be, if I understand that one correctly. But you don't get to see the person. The point is, will you be able to make a connection with somebody and then continue on with that relationship even if you don't find them as attractive as you wish they were, right? I have, once again, never seen it. So The Bachelorette, it's such a strange concept to me. I don't know how long a season is, so I'm not really certain how much time they get to spend with one another before the Bachelor or Bachelorette gets to decide on who they are choosing. And ultimately, is the giving of the rose the final thing that you do when it's the very last episode? Or do you give a rose at the end of each episode to indicate who is on top? I'm going to compare it to Great British Bake Off because, we've got the... what do you call it? Not top baker, but whoever wins for there's a award. I'm really curious about some of the logistics of how this game show works. Reality show, game show. It's basically a game show. Does that count as a game show? I guess it's not a game. But if it's what I would want, Star Baker. Thank you, Lauren. Jesus Christ. Oh, I saw Rowan talking about a dog. I'm so sorry. I moved on because I was talking about dogs before we started recording. Paralyzed princess when she drags her back legs and wishes to be carried. Relatable. I really, if I were going to like do something like this, my ideal would be, we have at least 20 episodes and I get to spend a ton of time with each person. It's always edited to make it look like they don't get to spend that much time with each other. So I don't know how much of that's reality and how much of that is just the show trying to ramp up tension. But she mentions in this episode, like, I haven't had a chance to have my one-on-one. And that makes it sound like there's very little one-on-one time. And I absolutely cannot imagine being in a room with like 10 other women that are all competing for the same guy that I'm competing for, and I have to like prove that I am more worthy than they are. That's like a nightmare. There is nobody who comes out looking good in that scenario. Like, it's just, all I can think is everybody is utterly full of shit. You think you get a performance when you just start first dating somebody and you get their best foot forward imagine if it's televised. Like, are you kidding? You are not getting a real representation of a soul in that sort of scenario. I know I would be pulling out all the stops and doing all kinds of shit that I would never dream of doing in an actual relationship or even like genuinely dating. So that is utterly mind-blowing to me. But yeah, if anybody feels like filling me in on how that works, even in the Discord, like if you go into the no spoilers Jane the Virgin, you can like leave some info there because I am really, really curious about it. So we start things off with Jane, and she is it's a flashback to her and Michael and how she attempted to get herself interested in the things that he is interested in. And I really want to like point out here, not to be that person, but it's so typical that women do this and men really make no effort, because the way that our society is set up, we inherently think that anything that women are interested in is less worthy. So if a woman is trying to like, learn about what a man is interested in, she is trying to improve her palate and make herself more cultured and civilized because she's going to like what men like. Whereas if men attempt to learn what the woman in their lives like, they are lowering themselves. They are dipping their toes in things that are beneath them, ultimately, just to make her happy in this real condescending sort of way. And it's so like, you could set your watch by it, you guys. It really is. It's the ultimate thing where whatever women thinks is cool, either it becomes mocked to the point of being an actual punchline, like Pumpkin Spice was, or men eventually take an interest and then it becomes their thing, and we forget that women were the ones first interested, like the Beatles. And it's always just, women's stuff, and it's just hand waved as if we're not one of the biggest spending demographics on the face of planet Earth. Like, come on. So she is over here reading a book that he's doing that thing where he's hovering over her shoulder and being like, wow, isn't this amazing? And she just has to be like, yeah, ooh, definitely. Movie, same thing. Then they go camping and she is sweating nothing but bugs. You guys, Central Florida, and it is 104 at night. If you have never lived anywhere that the heat is above 95, even when the sun is down, I don't know how to adequately express how fucking creepy it is. Like, it's pretty rare here in Texas for that to even happen, but it does. And like this year we had a particularly horrific heat wave where it was like 108 during the day and it would drop to like 99 at night. And the bizarre feel of it, stepping out, darkest pitch, moon's out, and it's still sweltering. I cannot express how much I hate it. It's unnatural. This is not how we are meant to live. So she's trying to be like a good sport. And eventually he turns around and he's like, oh, I'm going to make up for all of it. I whittled you a giraffe. And honestly, this giraffe, pretty good work. I'm not unimpressed. I actually really, really like this. However, this is god-awful and horrible. And I am so proud of her just saying, I can't do this. I hate camping. I tried to like it because I know you love it, but you should know it is never happening again. I really hope that's not a deal breaker. And look, this is the thing about like wanting your significant other to have other friends. You want them to have things that if you don't like them, they can go with their other friends to do that thing. I really don't like camping. There was once upon a time when I did. I'm too old and fat and tired for camping anymore. So now when Owen goes camping, he goes with his dude friends. And they do this every year in September. They go camping together and they have like a weekend away. It's kind of funny actually because he doesn't stay. He comes home to sleep because he has a CPAP machine. So he like drives out, hangs out with them at the lake all day. And then once it's bedtime, he drives home. He climbs into bed for his CPAP. And then when I get up in the morning, he's already gone and he is headed back out to the lake. So that's his camping. But nevertheless, I would not want to do that either. So it's just great. He has friends that he does that with. He can still get his fix. I don't have to participate. It's wonderful. This is why I really encourage people when you date a guy who doesn't have any actual friends, and this happens a shocking amount of the time. I have had so many relationships where the man I was with seemed to have no close friends. They've come to rely on you for everything social, and it's too much. They rely on you for, you know, emotional labor, for social labor, and domestic labor. It's too many things. People need to have other sources of support. It's just the only way for things to be balanced and sane. So yeah, he says it's not a deal breaker. I don't think there can be any deal breakers here. And I love this. She goes to hug him and he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but you have a stank going on. And she says, you said no deal breakers. And she climbs on top of him reeking. And it says that was the grossest Jane had ever been until now. And we go to her in the kitchen with her baby, and he is balanced on this, like she's got something around her waist that almost looks like a like float that you would use in a pool, but it's like only a half circle. I have seen this before. I don't know what it's called, but I've seen it for gamers that they use it to support their forearms when they're holding a controller. And she has it tied, like in a pillowcase that's tied around her waist so that when she's holding the baby, she doesn't have to like use all of her muscles, her arm muscles to support the baby. This thing tied around her waist is doing most of the support so that her other hand is free. And she's just standing over the sink eating crackers or something. And all of her family, Rogelio and Raphael, Michael's not here at this point, but he shows up later. They are all standing around discussing when the last time she had a shower was. Guys, this would be me. It absolutely would. And you know how I know? Because I straight up didn't shower for 7 days straight when I was dealing with the puppies. When I took them in, they required support unparalleled to anything I had ever experienced. I have since learned that it's like having a newborn. I had to force feed them and give them medications every 2 hours. So it was me and Owen switching off. And one of us would put a timer on for 4 hours and we could sleep for 4, and it would be staggered. Each of us would get 4 hours on a different shift and the other would be the one getting up in between. And it was so exhausting and so overwhelming, and there was absolutely no room for anything else. Imagine newborns, but 8 of them, and they're all deathly ill and could die at any moment and start dying. Imagine that. And it was that. And it was 2 weeks. And I showered maybe twice in those 2 weeks. Maybe. Like, I'm not even going to say that with my hand on the Bible, because I don't even know that's true. I was so disgusting. And it was like a combination of just the exhaustion of it and not being able to like muster up any energy to do anything in addition. But also I had this like old bathrobe that I would put on, because when you were trying to force feed them, you have a syringe of food. And what I would do was I would pour unsalted chicken broth, and I would put a can of dog food in the blender, blend it up to make this like really fine slurry, and then I would suck it up into a syringe and I would squeeze it down their throat. But these puppies were just big and just strong enough that they could really resist me. So sometimes they'd move and you would squirt yourself with this disgusting muck. It reeked. And so I would cover myself in this huge robe so that I could hold them like this. And honestly, this breastfeeding pillow is what Lauren's telling me it is. Thank you, Lauren. This would have come in handy, actually, because holding them at the right spot was kind of tough. So this would have been really good. And, even with that robe, it took the worst of it. But I am sure that I was walking around flecked with like old dog food. And I was so disgusting, fucking foul. Like, oh my God, you guys, I really felt for her. And at one point she's about to get in the shower and they're all like encouraging her to go do that. And then she comes out and she says, "I'm so tired. I think I'm just going to take a nap," which that is a whole entire mood. And there's also the aspect of it. Taking a nap, your baby can be in the bed with you. You know where he is. You're with him. Taking a shower, it's hard. Like, you don't usually want to have the baby just sitting in the bathroom getting steamed up. Like, that's not great for them. So you have to have a little time by yourself. And when you are as anxious as she clearly is about Mateo's welfare, that's another added thing in addition to just being fucking wiped out. And then we find out that there's a whole thing going on with the neighbors who are musicians, and they are playing really, really loudly, and they aren't letting her sleep. So she's having, like, even when she's attempting to get rest, it's not really always working out for her. So it's just a bad situation overall. Eventually, her mother convinces her to go to lunch, and Raphael and Michael both volunteer. So it's going to be like the 3 of them, even though they had been getting along. It's not really happening anymore. We jump then over to Petra. And I am so delighted, guys, because I had thought we were going to get multiple episodes. After this whole thing goes down, there's a point at which Raphael is pretty sure that his assistant Scott is the father of the baby Petra is carrying. And I thought we were going to get like multiple episodes of him thinking that. And no, he finds out by the end of this episode that it's his baby. And I was so delighted. I can't wait to see what he does, because I genuinely have no guesses. I do not know. There are so many directions this could go in terms of like how he chooses to handle the situation. And I do not know what like legal recourse he I don't know anything. So who knows how he handles it. For now, we have Scott coming in while she's getting acupuncture on her face for fertility. And she's just laying there with these needles in her face. And I'm going to guess that these are like real acupuncture needles, because if you've never had acupuncture, unless they get you a particular way, those needles don't feel like anything. You won't even notice they're there. So she's just talking to him, and it's super creepy to watch, but I know from experience that there's like very little sensation a lot of the time with these sorts of things. But yeah, he says you have until the end of the day to get Raphael to sign my new contract. And if you don't, I'm going to tell him that you stole his sperm. And I am dying to know also, in addition to just what he's going to do with Petra, is he going to find out about the fact that Scott was blackmailing her? Because I have to assume if he finds out that Scott knew and just used it to his own ends and didn't actually warn Raphael, that Scott's out of a job. So unless Scott has something that he can hold over Raphael's head and like use to keep his place, I don't know whether we're ever seeing him again, which is a shame because Scott is fine as hell. Jesus Christ, you guys. Like this scene where he is crouched next to Petra, you know, I know that I'm supposed to be like, what a terrible man. But all I can do is go, look at the symmetry. My God, the jawline on him, it's ridiculous. Like, he is just gorgeous. So we then cut to Xiomara and Rogelio. And it turns out, and I was right to wonder about this, because I did, when they bailed on the show they were supposed to perform in order to be at Mateo's birth, they were violating a contract. And so now, in order to make up the show that they bailed on, they have got to perform on a cruise ship. And naturally, Rogelio sees this as beneath him and does not want to do it. Whereas Xiomara is like, actually, that would be kind of dope. And also, if they're going to sue us if we don't do it, then it's a no-brainer that we do it. Because both of us now are connected since we got married. And if you get sued, then I'm on the fucking hook for that just as much. So yeah, we're going to do the thing. And he is such a brat about it, you guys. Oh my God. I'm going to go through their story mostly in one shot. Stacy's in the chat saying, I love how they don't drag stuff like that out. I think that was in response to the thing with Scott, and agreed. Rowan says, surely eventually Petra would have to say the baby is Raphael, so that's sort of a limited ability to blackmail. That's true. Maybe he just wants it for his resume. I don't know. So what goes on with Rogelio and oh my God, guys, what is his wife's name? I can't believe I'm doing Xiomara. Jesus Christ. Don't record for 2 months and completely lose everybody's fucking name. When Rogelio and Xiomara are, they're on the cruise ship, and apparently it's allegedly only going to be a meeting where they find out like what's going to be expected of them and decide whether they want to go through with this or not. But Rogelio does not like fully read the email or listen to the voicemail or whatever it was. He isn't great at hearing people. It's just really not his thing. He is so self-absorbed. Lord bless him. And yeah, this made total sense to me. So the message he had gotten was that he needed to be off the ship by 2. But what he heard was that the meeting was at 2. So he and Xiomara are in the midst of being shown the space in which they will be performing. And first of all, the space is so tiny that it's already insulting. But also, they're setting up a buffet. And Rogelio is like, oh, so you'll take this away once we perform. And this guy's like, no. People will be eating at the buffet while you perform. It's dinner and it's dinner theater. You sing, they eat. And Rogelio throws a temper tantrum and demands to get off the ship. But when they step outside, they have pulled away from port and it is too damn late, which is good because they do need to do this. Xiomara is right and he's being such a child. And later on, he admits to her that it's just part of his fear about like being a performer and aging. And he keeps bringing up Charo. And, I assume that this is based in reality, that Charo was indeed performing on cruise ships. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that cruise ships for most entertainers are kind of considered bottom tier. Like, it's the sort of thing that you do because it's a steady paycheck and a reliable, like, it's the sort of thing as a performer, a lot of times you get real inconsistent work. So if you get a sign up for this, it's really nice in that you know where your money's coming from. But it's not like you're going to make your big break after being on a cruise ship. That's never something that it's going to look awesome for you on a resume or that you're going to get discovered. Like, you may, it's not like it's never happened, because it has, but it's just so unlikely. And it's oftentimes you have to do real watered down versions of your material if you're a comedian, or you have to like tone down some of the sexual elements and stuff. If you're a dancer, you need to make it like palatable to a broader audience and an older, more conservative audience a lot of the time. So it just kind of feels like stifling creativity for the sake of a buck, which is not a great feeling when you're an artist. And so I understand him just being like, I hate this. But also, sir, you have such cachet already with your name. I don't think this is going to hurt you too bad. It'll be fine. If anything, I could see if he went public with the reason why he's doing this performance, getting a ton of support from people because, oh, he has this, daughter that he gave up the big show and went and worked on a cruise ship just so that he could be at the birth. I feel like this would work for him on social media really well if he decided he wanted to play it this way. But anyway, so they get trapped here and they wind up in this tiny little room. I really appreciated that the cabin they're shown to have in the show is like the size that one of those cabins really is, because they are closets. I mean, yeah, even the big luxury ones, they're so small. I could never, I think about how often older people are on these cruise ships, and when you're older and you've lost some of your flexibility or you've gained weight, maneuvering around small spaces is harder and harder. And I have to imagine that you share a room like this with somebody and you can only really shower and get dressed when they're out of the room, because you need that whole space to move around in, right? I would think. Also, their pillow is 2 feet from the bathroom door when they're laying down. So there's no taking a shit when your partner's in the room with you, unless you have got some poopery or something like this. Anyway, moving on. So the two of them perform in these god-awful sailor outfits. It's so bad, you guys. It's so bad. Even me, who is go ahead and humble yourself, guys. It's fine. You need to do this. Do what you got to do. It was really hard to watch. I mean, Shamara is bringing it the way that she does. And even with her trying to make the best of it, I'm just like, oh God, I hate this so much. And you can see everybody walking around with their plates. Nobody is looking at the stage. There isn't any indication that a single person even knows who Rogelio is and is pleased to see him just for that sake. It's just agonizing. Look, as somebody who, similar to Rogelio, thrives on attention, if I were up there singing my little heart out, wearing the compulsory sailor suit, and nobody even looked up, I would jump off the ship. It's curtains for me. That's it. I could not finish. I couldn't do it. So I was very, very hard on Rogelio for this entire episode. And then we reached this point and I was sort of like, no, end it all. That's fair, Rogelio. Go deal with a lawsuit. This isn't worth it. I hate this for you. I'm so sorry. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. And then the curtains are pulled back and there's a chocolate fountain that has been unveiled behind them. And everybody sees this and begins applauding. Now, I just want to make a note here. Everybody, chocolate fountains are fucking nasty. Don't do it. They smell kind of good. They look impressive. They are a trap. If you ever see one, I want you to just imagine that chocolate is actual sewage. It may as well be. Unless those things are cleaned continuously, which it's not possible to do, they are full of bacteria. It's just a petri dish. And the chocolate itself has to be thinned with oil in order to pour like that. So you're basically eating like a chocolate mix. It's not like if it were melted butter even then, I might be like, well, you got to do what you got to do. But it's going to be like vegetable oil, corn oil, whatever is the cheapest. And it's just this like waxy taste because there's way more fat than there should be in it. And it's just not worth it. A combo of the like unsanitary nature and the low quality of the chocolate, it's not worth the novelty. Don't do it. You're going to get sick and you're not even going to enjoy what you're eating. And I'm sure somebody's listening who's like, what are you talking about? I didn't get sick and I thought it tasted good. You got lucky. That's just a fact. You just lucked out. Just lucked out. Count your blessings. I'm so happy for you, but don't you ever tell anybody else to take the risk that you took. It's not worth it, kids. So, everybody applauding for this chocolate fountain is a goddamned fool, and you can quote me on that. But anyway, Shamara eventually turns and is able to like realize that the chocolate fountain is why everybody is applauding all of a sudden. She thinks that Rogelio has not spotted it, but it turns out later on that he has indeed, as he puts it, I have amazing peripheral vision. And I really do like that because I also have really good peripheral vision. And I was watching this like, there is no way he didn't see this. Come on. And it turns out he did indeed. But yeah, they sing and they're like right up on each other. And it turns out that this is real passion. So they go back to their room and they actually hook up and it seems like things are okay between them. Well. Which results in a conversation later about maybe we should stay married after all. Maybe we shouldn't get the annulment. And what it is that Shamara keeps bringing up is Rogelio's ex-wife who cheated on him, and apparently cheated on him like multiple times in a really humiliating way that was sort of like overt. You know, she was not discreet about it. And the tabloids, it seems like the tabloids found out before he found out. So like he discovered that she was cheating because he saw it on like a front page. So understandably, he has huge hangups about being cheated on and loyalty and all of this. And overreacted, so she says, to her kissing somebody else. I hesitate to say that he overreacted because I never like that term. I feel like overreaction implies a standard reaction that's just acceptable, and anything that deviates from that is somehow abnormal. And everybody's reactions to things are gonna be very different because they've got different baggage. Like, that's just people, right? So what may seem like an overreaction to you or me, if you find out the context, it may not really be. And so like, I get what we're saying here, but I just have a little bit of like a knee-jerk reaction to that word. Even there are times when I think it's actually valid to use the word, but you know what I mean? I just sort of like raise an eyebrow when I hear it and kind of go, is it? According to whom? Who gets to decide what's over and what's under and what's okay? Because, you know, if I found out Owen had kissed another woman, I would be pretty fucking livid. Like, I don't think that I would just divorce him, but they weren't married. They were living together, and I don't know, maybe that's exactly the time where you get to be really choosy, is before you have decided to fully commit to somebody. You're like, all right, well, let's see where this goes. And where it has gone is they kiss somebody else, and that's the end of it, you know? So anyway, I think that it's better that they are together, but I just want to treat Rogelio's feelings here with respect, because he had a bad experience, and it's a hard thing to like trust somebody again after a thing like that. So Rogelio, when he won't even like let her say his ex's name, and eventually she does, and he gets so upset about it, and she's like, look, she and I are not the same person. We aren't alike, you know? I did this thing. It was stupid, but I would never do what she did. And I regret doing what I did. And I would never risk this again. And I really liked that because I think we can fall into a trap of seeing somebody we're with now. I know I do this with Owen, where he might do something that Brendan also used to do. And I can't help but like conflate them because I was with both of them for a long time and they're both doing a thing in a particular way that I find upsetting. But just because he does this one thing does not mean that he is like Brendan. You know, that is not necessarily, it's not that simple. And you have got to learn to separate a person from their actions sometimes. Like it's a tricky thing to figure out because on the other hand, I think actions make a person. But you know what I'm saying? Like there's just a difference in the overall motivation and the lessons learned that changes things from person to person. And so ultimately, he's like, maybe we should stay married. And I'm thinking they're going to do that. But then, surprisingly, Shamara is like, you know what? I don't think we should. And I actually liked her reasoning here. She says, I have done things the fast way a lot. And really, we didn't like get to know each other super well. You know, I don't fully know about your exes and your other experiences. We haven't talked to each other about heavier stuff. Maybe we should like just actually go through with the annulment and go on a date. And he agrees to do that. And so they're going to just kind of like start over. And I really like this. I just think that's a healthy way to approach everything. So backing up, you guys, this whole thing with going out to lunch. So both Raphael and Michael are trying to impress Jane. It's very like, you know, when I was saying imagining The Bachelorette as just like a bunch of dudes hanging around trying to impress a woman and all of them just being bullshit. There is definitely a sense of that here where the two of them are each trying to make her happy in these very small ways where they're overworking themselves. And it's just like, it's so tough because I'm watching it and just thinking, all I want is to meet a man who will maintain this level of effort after there is no other threat left. Because it's all well and good for Raphael to build this amazing, like, nursery baby-friendly space, for Michael to buy a security system and install it and all this. Wonderful. They know they have direct competition. When that's gone, what are they going to be like? That's all I'm saying. And I say this as somebody who was like this. You know, it used to be, I'm dating you, and it's not a sure thing. I am pulling out all the stops with how I dress, doing my hair and makeup, cooking, whole thing. But it was a very quick thing for me to then, once I am in seriously with somebody, living together or married, I completely drop all effort. Stop dressing up, stop taking care of myself, stop taking any extra effort to anything, because now I have achieved the thing and it's done and I don't care anymore. I don't have to put the effort forth because it is done. It's a terrible way to approach things, by the way, you guys. It doesn't hurt them as much as it hurts you. Once you start to realize that you only do things that are good for you because it's technically kind of for somebody else, you really have to stop and take a look at your life and realize, like, oh my God, I have never actually cared about myself. I've just been trying to get validation externally. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. So these two are going back and forth, and Jane like takes the first opportunity she can to just bail because she realizes that the two of them are going to be driving her nuts and she needs to escape. And Michael and Raphael have a kind of confrontation here. Raphael says, "This is my family. What are you even doing here?" And Michael says, "I wouldn't be here if Jane didn't want me here." But later on, Raphael basically tells Michael, "If it weren't for you, our baby wouldn't have been abducted. She only knew what you would do to get the baby back because she knows that you are in love with Jane. And if you had just distanced yourself in the first place, she wouldn't have used our fucking infant newborn child as a bargaining chip," which is true. You know? So this is the moment where Jane sees a woman step into the bathroom, and she thinks for a terrible moment that it's Rose. And then the woman turns and she realizes it's not. But I'm over here thinking, maybe it is, though. What if it... I mean, we know she had plastic surgery. I had forgotten Jane doesn't know about that. So it isn't until later she goes back out there to the boys that Michael breaks it to her about Rose's plastic surgery. And she completely freaks out because now anybody can be Rose, and that's a bad place to be. So, oh my God, Bachelorette Jane 24, romance writer, Miami, Florida. I love the way that they have this pop up. And she keeps asking her like questions like, if you had to take one of them to a hotel on a fjord, who would you pick? But yeah, so this culminates in Jane kind of having another panic reaction. He's trying to convince her she's not coming back. Rose got what she wanted, but it's not effective. Jane drops her glass and just turns, and we see all of the women in the restaurant looking like Rose. You guys, hold on. I wish that I could share an image. Hold on. I got to screen share this because I need you guys to see the effect of this. I cannot stop laughing. When I first saw this, I just chortled to myself. Oh my God, where are the tools to screen share with you guys? Oh my God, I can't figure it out. This whole new thing. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Share something. Can you see it? Do you see the Rose in the middle there with the pose of her hand? Like she's the waitress. So she's got a little, one of those, what do you call it? It's not exact. It's like a half apron, I guess. But the way she's standing and like, she's holding, I think like a pot of coffee and like looking at Jane. This cracked me up so bad. I was this shot, if I were like, for Spoil Me, I don't do it. I do it for the regular episodes. But if I were going to use a shot from the episode for the podcast episode image, this would be the one I would pick because it's so funny. Anyway, okay, I'm done sharing, but I just needed you guys to all like see what I'm talking about because I just found that pose so funny. So, she gets home and it's very clear to her mother and grandmother that she is just feeling away, that everything was super awkward. Both of them are on different sides. Her mom says, Team Michael, print the t-shirts, make the mugs. And her Abuela, I love this. Family first. And all things equal, wouldn't you prefer to be with the baby's father? And plus, I mean, look at the guy. I love her so much. So she goes to her room, has another back and forth with Bachelorette Jane. I'm not going to like go through each of these because basically what it is that you're imagining is always what it's an endless pros and cons list between the two guys. This is though, when we meet the two women next door who are the rockers, playing at all hours of the night. And when I say all hours, I mean up to 11 p.m. because that's the noise ordinance. And I love that when she says, like, maybe don't play at 10 p.m. There's two of them, and they both look like they're in their very early 20s, maybe even late teens. I love her, Jane saying, "I love your sound. I was just wondering if maybe you could not start practice at 10 p.m. Noise ordinance says we can play till 11. That's why my dad rented for us here." Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I get it. But but it's something about the acoustics. It sounds like you're right inside my house. So weird. That's what it sounds like for us when that starts howling at 6 a.m. And the other girl says, "Noise canceling headphones help." And her friend says, "Entitled breeders," as they just walk away and slam the door in her face. This is one of those, like, noise canceling headphones may help Jane. What is she going to put those on her child? And if they help, maybe you should get them. How about that? Like, on the other hand, if the noise ordinance says until 11, and maybe they have day jobs, maybe this is the only time that works for them, and that sucks. But also, I don't know if there's a way to, like, play less loudly. I don't know how instruments work. Granted, later they get an amp because they're being petty bitches. So by then, all bets are off. But at this point, I'm still trying to give each of them, like, a bit of a benefit of the doubt. But yeah, they get a huge amp and they point it directly at Jane's room. And that's just so mean. And so what she does is she steals the amp in a moment that is not well thought out. She's out with Raphael on a walk. She has him carry Mateo so that she can fit the amp in her stroller. I don't know how these girls are so sure Jane took it. If it's that they have a security system, like, we have nowadays, this was made before this was popular, but we have those Ring cameras now all over the neighborhood. So I would not have been surprised if this were set in modern day, if somebody else's security picked her up doing it. But I feel like that's probably pretty unlikely when this was made. And it could just be that they make a general accusation. I don't know if you do that, if the cops really would just show up and come in your house. I would guess not. But also, by the time Jane gets home and sees them, like, hassling her grandmother is so intimidated by the police in a general sense that even if they weren't technically allowed, I could see her just doing whatever they said, because you don't want to make trouble and cause a bigger issue for yourself, And so it's a terrible scene because, like, we had earlier on in the episode another flashback to Jane talking to Michael about her grandmother being here illegally and whether that might be some kind of deal breaker for him because of the, fact that he is a police officer and that this is unlawful. And is that going to be a conflict of interest for you? Whatever. To which he's basically like, unless she's a criminal mastermind, then no, I don't care. It's fine. But yeah, she gets home and sees this scene with her grandmother basically like being grilled in their living room, and she is unable to provide an ID, and Jane just plays for time and sends her grandmother off into the back room and says, my neighbors are rude. They pointed this at my window on purpose. It doesn't matter, I know, and I'm going to return it right away, and I'm very, very sorry. And the cop says, try and work it out between you. Up to them if they press charges. And your grandma needs to sort out her paperwork so next time she'll be able to find it. And she says, yes, sir, thank you. We understand. And these two leave. They picked two pretty big, beefy dudes, though. So there's a real feeling of intimidation here, even if they're not trying for it. And she goes into her abuela's bedroom and is apologizing. But guys, her crying, I hated this so much. It got to me so bad because her grandmother I don't feel like we have ever seen her cry except in like a single tear during a moment of joy kind of situation. This kind of like agonized crying that comes from the pit of your stomach from being really terrified. She does it really convincingly, and I hated it. It was so upsetting to watch. I don't want her to be so afraid. So later on, she winds up just like telling Jane and Shamara that she's going to try for her green card, even though by coming forward and saying that she's undocumented, like there is a possibility that they will just deport her. You know, that's the thing, guys. I just, immigration is such a weird, complicated, and yet ultimately like it's really simple, but we make it complicated kind of situation. And this where it's like, well, just come legally. Well, you know, if you haven't, because you had to get out of a bad situation as soon as you could, but then you're here and you want to do it legally, it's possible to just be punished because you're trying to go straight now. And what good does that do anybody? And I'm not gonna soapbox it, but you guys know, like I had so many members of my family that were stuck in situations like this. And ultimately all of them managed to like, they would come and they would establish themselves somehow and then go back to Colombia, and then they would get their visas and be able to come back, and they would get married because the one who had come before them, who was going to be their spouse, was already a citizen. And so they would like establish it in a certain way. But it was a really like long, tiring process that takes a lot of money. And that's something that nobody wants to fucking talk about. The reason my father was ever able to like get up here and get a green card was because of my mom and marrying her. And the only reason he was allowed to marry my mom was because he had a shit ton of money, because he was a drug dealer, and her family was like, okay, fine, you can take care of her, so you can have her. My mom was 16, you guys, super gross. So he was able to get a green card because he found his way into a situation with a citizen, which he would not have been able to get into if he didn't have money. And then if you want to do it legally, you need even more money than that, because it's an ongoing process and often involves bribes. Like, it's just so much. It's so much. So Jane returns the amp to these two women, and they're like, we missed our gig because we didn't have our amp. And Jane says, what if I can get you a better gig? And she then texts Raphael, so I might have booked you a band for 2 weeks at the Marbella. Perhaps you've heard of them, the Raging Neighbors. And I was trying to figure out, when she says for 2 weeks, she means like ongoing for 2 weeks, right? Not just like 2 weeks from now. They're going to be playing at the Marbella like every night for 2 weeks? That feels like a lot. I don't know if that's great. I guess we'll see. So ultimately we have this like bit of information we find out, because, you know, Michael says that it's his fault, that he agrees with Raphael. Because Jane says, look, he was mad, but he says, no, he was right. I am why she took him. She knew I'd do anything to get him back. And Jane says, by that logic, it's my fault too. I'm the reason Rose knew how you felt about me. Which I'm like, that doesn't actually work, Jane. But I think this scene may wind up becoming kind of, it does become important because of the Switzerland thing. So she is with a difficult customer who says, do you know anything about wine? Jane was with Raphael. Michael was heartbroken, is what's under the subtitle. Because I know dry, and this isn't dry, it's corked. And corked, for those who don't know, is wine that's gone bad. And I think it's called corked because the cork is meant to be a seal against air so that it can ferment properly inside the bottle. And the implication being that the cork is not sealed properly. So there's an interference of oxygen, which like oxidizes the wine and makes it more like either flat and bitter or vinegary than it's supposed to be. And Rose says, actually, it's not uncorked. It's complex. My husband owns the hotel. The grapes at this particular vineyard in Switzerland and their unique texture gives the wine its flavor. I felt the grapes myself. But if it's too advanced for your palate, I'd be happy to bring you a Chardonnay with a side of ice, perhaps. And I was like, wow, that is so bitchy. I loved it. I really did, though. He says, no, this'll be fine. And Jane follows her and thanks her. And she says, oh, my pleasure. It's Jane, right? We haven't officially met. I'm Rose. And then Jane catches sight of Michael, who is very down in the dumps and looking super sad. They make eye contact and it's a long pause. And then Jane says, I told her all about us and our relationship. She seemed so concerned. She just kept asking so many questions. And Michael asks her in a really unexpected twist, would you recognize the wine bottle? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And it turns out that his theory is that the wine, the fact that she went to Switzerland and that isn't on any of her passport information means that likely when she went there, she was traveling under a different name. I've been through Rose's reports. She's never been to Switzerland. So she had to have gone as whoever she was before. We have a place to start looking. And we get a better look at the label, and the mountain range on the label is the same mountain range in the background when she has been making her phone calls. And I am really like, we keep seeing her from behind, and she has the same hair, it seems like, but I'm not convinced that's true. So here's my theory. I keep saying like, oh, it looks like a wig. I don't know. Blah, blah. And I just didn't really think about the fact that maybe this actress who, is fairly well known, who played Rose, maybe she just didn't want to turn up to just do like a 2-second scene with her back to the camera. And maybe they just have another actress wearing a wig for those moments. I'll be honest, you guys, it literally never occurred to me, but that could just be the only reason why the wig looks so obvious and so bad. But we see her on the phone and she's telling somebody to do it now. And I'm just like, I don't care for that. What does that mean? Meanwhile, there's a fucking dude who is staying at the hotel who's one of her henchmen. And it turns out that apparently what's going to be done now is they're going to take poor, oh my God, what's her name? It starts with an L. Raphael's sister. And they're going to take her prisoner. I don't know if it's going to be like hostage or what they're going to do. But I really hate this for her. Like, I just feel like she's really been put through it. And all she's trying to do is get straight with everybody, fix some of the things going on with her. And, she's very observant. So she's the one who tells Raphael about her suspicions that Petra is pregnant. And, this sucks. Louisa, thank you, Stacy. I kept thinking Lucy, and I was like, it's not Lucilia. Because I knew it was like, a Spanish version. But thank you, Louisa. So I don't know what she wants her for. Is it just like, oh, I love you so much, I just want you with me, and I knew I had to snatch you up? I think it's about the forging that she has detected here. So to explain this, I have to back up a little bit more. There's a land deal that that Raphael is thinking about taking up with what's his face, McLaughlin, I think is his name, right? And we get a fun little recap of how much each of them has screwed the other over. And he is like pretending to be like, oh yeah, this deal is something that you should go for, because he knows that they do not trust him. So what he has set up is a fake like reference number that they can call to get their own information. And that way Raphael can flatter himself that he has done his homework and get a second opinion on whether this is good land to purchase. And if he doesn't, like, if he finds out that it's a lie, that's only going to support what Lachlan's in the shithouse for him. That's only going to tie in with what he already believes. Oh, it's Rowan saying Lachlan, thank you. It's so funny. I said McLaughlin, but then I started just saying Lachlan somewhere along the line. I remembered, but it was just an automatic thing. But thank you, Rowan. But yeah, so he gets the confirmation that this, is an erosion area, that it's not good to buy. And he really thinks like, oh, I outsmarted this guy who's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. But it turns out Lachlan knew exactly how they were going to play it, and he handed Raphael the phone number to call. And so he gets a woman who's working for him, who pretends the land is a bad deal, convinces Raphael not to bid on it, which results in Lachlan's people that he's now working for getting the land for a steal, and it's in the exact place that one would be able to build to block the view the Marbella has of the ocean. I don't really know how that works because it looks like the Marbella is directly on the ocean. So, I don't understand how this works, but I am willing to accept it. It's fine. And I just did really enjoy the reintroduction of Lachlan. I appreciate there being another character who's as twisty as Petra, because Raphael wants to be as twisty as Petra, but he can never really keep up with her, and I don't want him to be able to keep up with her, because if he could, he would be a bad person, and I don't want him to be a bad person. So we need somebody like Lachlan thrown into the mix so that Petra has somebody to go up against without us having to compromise the personality of one of our love interests. And in the midst of all this, of course, is Petra trying to hide the fact that she is pregnant. Louisa noticing she's not eating soft cheeses. She's not having any wine. I think she's pregnant. And it never once occurs to Raphael to consider anything with him, because why would he? He doesn't even know that second sample even exists. So he's laughing with Jane about the fact that Petra is pregnant, and they're both talking about how maybe this could be exactly the godsend that they need, that if she has somebody else that she's preoccupied with and a baby of her own, she'll be out of our hair and we won't have to worry about it. But little do they know, and we get the moment a little bit later where Raphael gets a phone call, and it's a pretty good moment, you guys, because I didn't realize that they were just going to tell him. This whole thing is so sudden, and they have a slow replay of it. So yeah, Mr. Solano, this is Diane calling from the Miami-Dade Memorial Fertility Clinic. We have a $128 rebate for you. And he's like, why? And she says, well, you've been paying the storage fees, which, considering that you took your last sample back, that's no longer necessary. And he's like, what? Well, your wife, Petra Solano, came by our office 2 weeks ago to retrieve the sample we found. And he just drops the phone and gets this agonized look in his eyes. He has got, I don't know if this is a trick of the screen on my end or if something happened to the actor, but in that scene, he has got a black spot on the white of his eye. It almost looks like a burst capillary or something. But it made me so worried for him for a moment. I thought they were doing a whole other thing, that he was having a heart attack from this news. You know what I mean? I thought this was actually part of the show, and I think it's just something that was going on with him personally as an actor, because they have the whole let's point out the lip and then the eyebrows and they circle his eyes, and I was like, oh, we're going to reference that, but no, it's I was just like, oh my God, did he get punched? Is he okay? And we jump right from him getting this news to Petra getting the plus sign on her pregnancy test and then promptly vomiting. So yeah, your girl's knocked up, and now I don't know what he does. Really do not. Meanwhile, Jane has had to tell both of these boys that she's in love with both of them. I admire her being honest, even though it's not ideal. And, they're both pissy, but if I were in their shoes, as much as I would be annoyed about this, I would also be glad that she's not just continuing to string me and make me think I'm the guy in play. They each are standing in front of her, basically telling her, tell him that you really like me. Guys, no offense, but if you're going to be this pushy about it, you better be prepared to hear some news that you're not super excited about, because you were the one who demanded an answer and were putting your foot down. She kind of had to tell you. Sorry for it, but what do you want from her? So, anyway, that is the end of the episode. I have got to wrap up, but thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, feeding me names and reminding me of stuff. I really, really appreciate it. Stacy says, oops, he's the poor sucker. Indeed. And I can't wait to watch the next episode, you guys. All right. I'll see you soon. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.